want to start with a question. Not a rhetorical one, a real one. How much have you spent in time, in money, in hope, trying to change something about yourself or your life that has not changed? Take a moment, actually add it up. The therapy, the courses, the books, the certifications, the coaching, the weekends away, the retreats. The programs that promised transformation and delivered something. Something that helped for a while. Something that moved the needle a little. Something that felt like progress until 6 months later, you noticed the pattern was back. For most people watching this, that number's significant. Often past £5,000, often past 10,000, sometimes past 20,000 or higher. And yet, here you are, still searching, still sensing that something is missing, still feeling that the map you've been given is not quite big enough to show you where you actually need to go. I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because it's the most important question I can ask. And because the answer tells you everything about why genuine change is so rare. And why what I'm about to share with you today is so different from everything else you've encountered. My name is Rothery. I've been studying human beings for 38 years. Not casually, obsessively. Theology, science, metaphysics, philosophy, psychology, CBT, counseling, hypnotherapy, neuroscience, ancient wisdom traditions, modern trauma research, quantum theory, mythology, occult practice, Hermetic philosophy, shamanic traditions, and everything in between. This was not to collect credentials, it was not to build a brand, not to become an expert, but to find out what is actually true about human beings and human change. And what I found after 38 years of searching changed everything I thought I knew. Let me tell you something about the personal development industry that nobody inside it will say out loud. It is built on your failure. Not maliciously, not with evil intent, but structurally, the entire model depends on you not getting better. Think about it. If the course worked completely, you'd not buy the next course. If the therapy resolved it, you'd not need more therapy. If the coaching produced the result, you'd not renew the coaching. If the certification gave you everything, you would not need the advanced certification. The model is subscription to incompleteness. And here is the most insidious part. Nobody in the industry knows they're doing it. Every practitioner genuinely believes their approach is the answer. Every course creator genuinely believes their framework is enough. Every therapist genuinely believes their modality covers what matters most. None of them are lying. They just do not have the full map. And so people like you, intelligent, committed, serious people who want genuine change, spend years collecting fragments. Each one real, each one partially helpful, none of them complete. Now, this is not a new problem. It is as old as human beings trying to understand themselves. But in the last 50 years, as the personal development industry exploded into a multi-billion-pound business, it became industrialized. Coaching became a methodology. Therapy became a protocol. Mindset became a product. Healing became a brand. And the fragment became the offer. One technique, one approach, one framework, one modality. Packaged, certified, and sold to people who were told this was the answer, when it was, at best, one piece of a much larger puzzle. I want to show you today what that larger puzzle actually looks like. And I want to show you why, once you see it, you'll never be able to unsee it. In 1988, I began what I thought would be a fairly straightforward journey. I was searching for the truth about human change, about what actually works when someone is sitting across from you in genuine pain, genuine confusion, genuine readiness to be different. I started with psychology, the mainstream models, CBT, cognitive approaches, behavioural frameworks. They worked on thought. They were useful, but they left something untouched. I moved to somatic work, the body-based approaches. They reached places cognitive work could not, but they left something else untouched. I studied hypnotherapy, I studied NLP, I studied counselling and psychotherapy. Each one added something real. Each one had a ceiling. I went deeper. I studied philosophy, Plato, Descartes, Hume, Kant, Heidegger. The great thinkers who had spent their lives trying to understand what a human being actually is. I studied theology, not for religious reasons, but because every great religious tradition has spent thousands of years mapping the inner world of the human being. The Sufis, the Kabbalists, the Christian mystics, the Buddhist scholars, the Hindu philosophers. Every tradition in its own language was mapping the same territory. I studied quantum physics, the science that was beginning to show that reality itself is far more malleable, far more participatory, far more responsive to consciousness than the dominant materialistic paradigm had ever suggested. I studied mythology, the ancient stories that Carl Jung himself recognized as maps of the psyche. The hero's that journey of Hercules, the 12 labours, the descent into the underworld. Every great myth I began to understand was not entertainment, it was instruction. A map of the developmental journey every serious human being must undertake. I studied the esoteric traditions, the Hermetic philosophy, the alchemical texts, the occult sciences that have been dismissed by the modern world, but preserved carefully and deliberately. The deepest knowledge human beings have ever accumulated about the nature of consciousness and reality. And for years I sat with all of this, trying to understand not just what each tradition knew, but what they all knew together. What was the pattern underneath the patterns? What was the architecture underneath all of the approaches? And then, gradually, over years of work with real clients in real pain, it began to emerge. Not as a theory, as a living system. 9 distinct domains of human experience, each one essential, each one connected to the others. Each one, when addressed properly, unlocking something that nothing else could reach. I called it the 9 realms. And the healing system at its heart, the clinical methodology I developed over decades of direct work with clients, I called Sanomentology. This is from 3 Latin roots: sano, to make whole, to restore; ment, of the mind; ology, the study of. The study of how the mind restores itself. Now, before I show you what the 9 realms actually contains, I need to explain something fundamental. Something that will reframe everything you thought you understood about why change is hard. The human being is not one-dimensional. This sounds obvious, but the implications are profound and almost entirely ignored by every mainstream approach to change. You are not just your thoughts. You are not just your emotions. You are not just your behavior. You're not just your body. You're not just your beliefs. You're not just your identity. You're not just your consciousness. You are not just your subconscious. You are all of these simultaneously and more. And they're not separate. They are layered in connected architecture, each one influencing the others in ways that are profound, complex, and largely invisible to the surface mind. Here is what this means for change. When you change one dimension and leave the others untouched, the untouched dimensions pull the changed dimension back. This is why insight does not always produce change. You can understand your pattern completely. You can name the wound, trace the origin, map the mechanism with clinical precision, and the pattern still runs. Because understanding lives in one part of the architecture, the pattern lives in another, and insight alone almost never crosses that gap. This is why healing does not always produce transformation. You can genuinely heal a wound. You can process the trauma, release the charge, integrate the experience, and 6 months later find yourself in the same situation with different people. Because the wound was real, but it was a symptom. The architecture that produced it is still intact. And this is why behavior change does not stick. You can white knuckle your way to a new habit. You can build the discipline, show up every day, change what you do, and eventually find yourself back where you started. Because behavior is the output of identity, and if you change the behavior without changing the identity will produce new behavior that serves exactly the same function. The problem has never been the fragment. The problem is that you have only ever been given fragments. And a fragment, no matter how good, cannot do the work of the whole. So what does the whole actually look like? Let me take you through the 9 realms, the 9 complete domains of human experience that together constitute the full architecture of change. And I want you to notice, as I describe each one, 2 things. First, how much sense it makes that this dimension exists and needs to be addressed. And second, how absent it is from most approaches to change. Everything begins here. Not because technique comes first, but because you come first. Whether you're working on yourself or working with others, the quality of your inner foundation determines the quality of everything that follows. The practitioner realm addresses who you are when you do this work. The 6 universal attributes that every serious change worker and every serious seeker needs to develop: intent, intuition, confidence, faith, rapport, alignment. These are not soft skills. They are the operating system beneath all technique. Without them, the best tools in the world produce inconsistent results. With them, even simple interventions reach depths that advanced techniques cannot. Now, most practitioners are never taught this. They're trained in a method and sent out into the world with no understanding of what they bring into the room and how profoundly it affects what is possible there. The practitioner realm changes that. This is the map of your inner world, not a vague spiritual map, a precise, structured 6-dimensional architecture showing you exactly how consciousness works, how your internal state produces your external reality, how the layers of mind interact, how the gap between understanding and change is created, and how to close it. The 6 dimensions of consciousness, the grid of reality, how intention actually works at the level of field dynamics, how coherence, or lack of it, determines what is possible in any given moment. Most approaches to change work at one level of consciousness and call it the whole. The consciousness realm shows you all six and teaches you to work at the level that actually matters for the change you're trying to create. Beneath your behavior is a decision. Beneath the decision is a belief. Beneath the belief is an identity structure. And beneath the identity structure is an architecture of archetypes, patterns so deep and so old they feel like reality itself. The identity realm maps that architecture completely. The 12 universal archetypes, the core identity, the shadow, the parts of you rejected, suppressed and buried because the world told you they were unacceptable. The wounded self, the adapted self, the authentic self. And at the very deepest level, the God seed, the 13th archetype. The pattern of what you actually are beneath everything that was built on top of it. The identity realm teaches you to see the structure that is currently running your life and to rebuild it deliberately. Not through affirmations or visualization, through precise, structured identity work that reaches the level where the self is actually constructed. Emotion is not the enemy. It's not weakness, it's not noise, it's not something to be regulated away or managed into compliance. Emotion is a diagnostic system. It's the vibrational output of your internal architecture, telling you precisely where you are, what is misaligned, what needs to change, and what direction to move in. Every emotion you've ever dismissed as inconvenient was carrying precise information about the structure of your inner world. The emotional realm teaches you to read that information. Not emotional regulation, emotional engineering. The three emotional states and what each one is telling you. How emotion imprints from the past are shaping current experience. How to transmute emotional energy rather than suppress or perform over it. That is the difference between managing emotion and using it as the most accurate diagnostic instrument available. This is Sanomentology, the clinical heart of the architecture. 40 plus complete protocols with full session scripts for every major presenting issue a practitioner encounters and every major wound a serious seeker carries. Chronic pain, trauma, PTSD, addiction, anxiety, depression, phobias, identity collapse, weight, sleep, relationship patterns, performance blocks, grief, anger, shame, the list goes on. Not frameworks, not approaches to adapt, complete sessions, tested over decades of direct client work that you can use from day one. The reason Sanomentology works where other approaches reach their ceiling is not technique, it's architecture. Sanomentology does not address the presenting problem. It addresses the architecture producing it. Because presenting problems are symptoms, and symptoms can be managed. But the architecture that produces them, when that changes, the symptoms do not come back. This is used by psychologists, psychotherapists, nurses, doctors, coaches and change workers in 18 countries across the world. And this is not because I marketed it aggressively, but because it works. Plato described it over 2,000 years ago. People chained in a cave, watching shadows on the wall, believing the shadows were reality. Someone breaks free, turns around, sees the fire that was cast in the shadows all along. The cave is not a metaphor. It is a description of how most human beings actually live, inside a structure of inherited beliefs, cultural conditioning, unconscious assumptions, and vibrational loops that were built around them before they were old enough to question any of it. The conditioning does not feel like conditioning. It feels like truth. The inherited beliefs do not feel borrowed. They feel self-evident. The loops do not feel like loops. They feel like life. The liberation realm is a modern initiation into that ancient journey out. The four enemies that keep people bound, named and dissolved. The false beliefs that maintain the cage, broken down systematically. The divine particle at the center of every human being, introduced and activated. Not with spiritual bypassing, not with positive thinking. A structured, serious curriculum for people who are ready to see what they've actually been living inside and are ready to leave it. Hercules did not choose the labours. They were given to him, thrust upon him by circumstance, by fate, by consequences of his own nature turned against itself. And yet each seemingly impossible task was precisely designed to develop something he could not have built any other way. Courage does not come from avoiding the lion, it comes from facing it. Wisdom does not come from cutting one head, it comes from learning why cutting one head grows two more. Acceptance does not come from avoiding the underworld, it comes from descending into it and returning. The heroic realm maps the 12 labours of Hercules as the 12 developmental thresholds every serious human being must cross. Courage, wisdom, persistence, vulnerability, cleansing, adaptability, mastery, emotional intelligence, integrity, endurance, creativity and acceptance. 12 weeks, each labour with a complete lesson and a guided trance session designed not to understand the quality, but to embody it. Because understanding courage is not the same as being courageous. The heroic realm closes that gap. This is the most confrontational realm in the architecture, because it begins with a truth that most people are not ready to hear. Your reality is not happening to you. It is being produced by you, not by your conscious wishes and preferences, but by your unconscious architecture, the field you're operating from without knowing it. When that architecture is incoherent, when different layers are running contradictory programs, reality scatters, opportunities disappear, relationships repeat, circumstances recycle. When it is aligned, when all dimensions are pulling in the same direction, reality shifts. Not because of wishful thinking, because the architecture that generates experience has been changed. The transformational realm is a 16-week structured collapse of the old architecture and rebuild of a new one. Conscious superposition, intention as a directional vector in the field diagnosis, probability pathing, symbolic anchoring, temporal stacking, strange attractors and nonlinear leaps. This is not motivation, this is technical work at the level where reality is actually constructed. Every serious tradition in human history preserved the same knowledge. The shamans, the magicians, the mystics, the alchemists, the druids, the Norse seers, the Hermetic scholars, the Mayan timekeepers. Across every culture, every century, every language, the same fundamental understanding. Human beings are capable of far more than ordinary experience suggests. Reality is far more malleable than the dominant paradigm claims. Magic, in its truest sense, is not superstition. It's the technology of consciousness, the ability to influence probability, shape timelines, and alter identity, and interact with the deeper architecture of existence. The potentiality realm is a complete initiation into this territory. 100 lessons across 10 complete programs, global magic traditions, mind technology, the lost human abilities, practical ritual, occult practice, alchemical transformation, cosmic magic, and at the end, the God form initiation. Not entertainment, not fantasy. A serious, structured 38-year informed exploration of what human beings are actually capable of at the far edge of the map. I want to speak directly now to two specific people. The first is the practitioner. You're a therapist, a coach, a healer, a psychologist, a hypnotherapist, a change worker of some kind. You are good at what you do. You get results. People come to you and leave better than they arrived. But if you're honest, and I think you are or you'd not still be watching this, you know there is a ceiling. You know that some clients get so far and then stop. You know that some issues shift and then return. You know that there are moments in sessions when something deeper is clearly happening and you do not have the architecture to meet it. You were trained in a method. You were not given the map underneath the method. You want to go deeper, not louder, deeper. You want a complete system you can stand behind without qualification. Something that holds up when the client in front of you does not fit the script. Something that gives you genuine depth, not just more techniques. Boundless was built for you. The complete Sanomentology clinical training with 40 plus protocols and full session scripts. The consciousness and identity frameworks that give your work genuine depth. The heroic and transformational architectures for long-term developmental work. Full practitioner certification on completion. Not another fragment. The complete architecture. The second person is the seeker. You're not a practitioner. You're somebody who takes your own inner life seriously. You have been working on yourself, genuinely, not casually, for years, maybe decades. You've read the books, you've done the therapy, you've tried the courses. Some of it helped. None of it finished the job. You're not looking for motivation. You're not looking for another framework to add to the pile. You're looking for the thing underneath all the frameworks. The architecture. The actual map of what a human being is and how human beings change. You know it exists. You've been sensing it for years. Boundless is that map. All 9 realms for your own transformation. The complete understanding of why you are the way you are. The sessions, 150 plus of them, that you can return to whenever life demands it. A lifetime library of change and growth that grows as the architecture grows. Not a course you complete and shelve. A living resource you grow into. Something that meets you wherever you are and takes you further than you've ever been before. I want to talk about money. Not because I enjoy it, although I do, but because avoiding it is dishonest and you deserve the honest conversation. Boundless is not cheap. The full program is £4,997. Right now there is a 48-hour enrolment window where you can invest at £2,997 or 12 monthly payments of £277. That's less than 1 therapy session per week. I know what some of you are thinking. I know because people say it to me directly. I wish I had £3,000. And I want to ask you something honest. How much have you already spent trying to solve the problem that Boundless addresses? Add it up honestly. For most people who have been serious about their own development or their professional training, that number is already past £3,000, often past £10,000. And yet something is still missing. Not because those investments were worthless, but because none of them were the complete architecture. Boundless is not another item in that list. It is the thing that makes everything else make sense. The map that shows you how the fragments fit together, the complete system you needed all along. One investment, everything you need. And everything I build next, because as the architecture grows, your access grows with it at no extra cost. Ever. Compare that to what the industry offers. A single reputable hypnotherapy diploma, £2,000 to £4,000, one modality. And an NLP practitioner and master certification, £3,000 to £5,000, one approach. A trauma therapy training, £2,000 to £4,000, one framework. A coaching certification, £3,000 to £10,000, one methodology. A year of weekly therapy, £3,000 to £6,000, one relationship, no training that you keep. Boundless contains all of the above, and 8 complete realms beyond them. So, the question is not whether you can afford Boundless. The question is whether you can afford to keep not having it. I want to make this real for you. Not abstract, not theoretical. Here is what the first week of Boundless actually looks like. On day 1, you receive access to the full portal immediately. You begin with the practitioner realm, specifically the practitioner operating system. The first chapter, the role of the multidimensional practitioner. So within the first hour, you'll understand why techniques alone have never been enough, what the real foundation of effective work actually is, and what has been missing from everything you have tried before. Days 2 and 3, the 6 universal attributes: intent, intuition, confidence, faith, rapport, alignment. Each one is a complete chapter. Each one will change how you show up with yourself and with clients with the work. Now, most people report a shift in the quality of their presence within the first 48 hours. Not because of anything dramatic, but because for the first time they actually understand what presence is and how to cultivate it deliberately. Days 4 and 5, the consciousness codex opens. You begin to see the 6 dimensions of consciousness and how your internal architecture has been producing your external reality. Most people say the same thing at this point. I've never seen it this clearly before. Not because it's complicated, because nobody has ever shown them the whole map. And days 6 and 7, your first subconscious activation session. These are guided processes that bypass the surface mind and work directly at the deeper levels of the architecture. You do not need to prepare, you only need to follow. Now, most people describe the first session as unlike anything they've ever experienced. And this isn't because it's strange or dramatic, but because it works at the level where things actually change. And at the end of week 1, you have the foundation, you understand the architecture, you have felt the work. 8 more realms are open and waiting. I want to end with something I believe very deeply. You are not broken. You have never been broken. You are undermapped. There is a difference, and it is the most important difference I know. Broken means something went wrong with you. Undermapped means you've been trying to navigate an extraordinarily complex inner world with a map that was never big enough to show you what was actually there. The map was not your fault. The map was what was available. But you do not have to keep using it. The complete map exists. It's been built. Over 38 years of obsessive, committed, serious study, from the best that every tradition, every modality, and every approach has ever produced. It's not borrowed, it's not repackaged, it's not another fragment dressed up as a complete solution. It is the complete architecture. And I built it because I believe, with everything I have, that every human being deserves access to the deepest understanding of what they are and what they are capable of. Not just the privileged few who can afford years of one-to-one therapy. Not just the certified professional. Everyone. If you're a practitioner who has sensed there is a level of work you've not been able to reach, this is how you get there. If you're a seeker who has known for years that the map was too small, this is the bigger map. If you're simply a human being who is done living inside an architecture that was built by somebody else and is ready to build your own, this is how you do it. Nobody is coming to save you. But the map that shows you how to save yourself, that exists. And it is waiting for you. The complete architecture is at ninerealmsinstitute.com/boundless-full-program. That is ninerealmsinstitute.com/boundless-full-program.